Hello, and welcome to Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. In each episode of the show, we hear the insightful confessions of a successful leader who wants to inspire others to live their professional and personal dreams. I am always keen to hear your feedback, particularly in relation to the kinds of leaders you would like me to invite onto the show in future. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rich insights from our special guest. Hello and welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. I'm delighted that Katie O'Malley has joined me in the studio today. Katie, welcome.
Gosh, Andrew, I am so delighted to be here with you and to connect with your audience.
Yeah, lovely to have you on the show, and we're really looking forward to hearing your unique story. We always ask our guests to introduce themselves. So, Katie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Katie O'Malley. I am the founder and principal coach of Encourage Coaching. We are based in Chicago, Illinois, the very Midwest, the heart of the United States. I am really driven, Andrew, by the values of courage, learning, and justice. And these are our three values that have pulled through my entire career, which has been pretty nomadic, going from political campaign work right out of college into the nonprofit sector, into commercial real estate, back to school to get my master's degree in counseling so I could help people at the intersection of mental health at work. And then finally, business ownership, which was never on my bingo card for my career or for my life. But it turns out not only am I pretty proficient at it, but I really enjoy it as well. I've got 2 dogs, no kiddos, and an avid Peloton rider. For folks who are also on the Peloton, you can find me at Courageous Kate, and I'd love to see you on the leaderboard.
Excellent. Tell us about your dogs.
Yes. So 2 dogs, Foxy and Charlie. I like to think of them as the odd couple. So Foxy was the first pup that I got. He is now 6 years old. He is a mini golden doodle. He sits behind me all day, Andrew. So my posture is really great. But this is my furry office assistant. Foxy at one point became a pretty needy, selfish only pup. The dog trainer suggested that one of the best ways to fix that is to get another dog. And so I rescued Charlie, who's over my right shoulder there on the back couch. He is 12 years old, from the Anti-Cruelty Society, and the 2 of them are just straight up brothers. So they will roughhouse all day and pretend like they don't like each other until one of them gets hurt, is sick, and then all they want to do is be near each other. But I love them so much.
And what I love about dogs, because you and I obviously both in this helping profession, I never had a dog when I was a kid, and it's my daughter that actually got us a sort of Labradoodle that we've got here. He's 6 as well. Ollie, he's not with me at the moment. But actually, in terms of presence and the importance of being present, there's nothing like a dog to actually remind you of that every time that you're with them. So I'm sure that will come up again later in the show.
Yes.
But let's get back to you in terms of where this all started. And we take our guests back to their childhoods, and we really want to understand what it was that was happening to you in that environment, the role models, all the things that are important that helped to shape that early leadership style that you started to develop in your sort of early 20s.
Yeah. And my gosh, family systems. This is something I could talk about all day long, but my family and growing up, it's so interesting. My mom was married before she met my dad. And so I am the only biological child from my mom and my dad. Prior to that, my mom was married, had 3 kiddos, ended up divorcing the person that she was married to. And it was so interesting that when my mom and dad got together, her children, so my half siblings, Carrie, Terry, and Danny, were already 14 to 20 years old when I was born. And so I was born with this huge age gap between my siblings and me. And looking back on it now, what I realize is I was forced to grow up pretty quick for that reason, because if I wanted to be heard, I could not behave like a child. If I wanted to have my perspective heard, my feelings heard. And so I think one of the things that happened pretty early on for me, and something I get complimented on now, is the way that I speak and the kind of vocabulary that I use, because it had to match the people that I was with. I became an auntie at the age of 8. And so my first nephew, Peter, who is getting married this year in September in Chicago, was born when I was 8 years old. And I remember so clearly going into second grade, telling my teacher, Mrs. Siegel, I am an auntie. My nephew was born last night. And Andrew, she couldn't believe me. She just, not even couldn't, but just wouldn't. And I am such a truthful person, being raised on my mom's side in the Jewish faith, and then on my dad's side in the Catholic faith, 50% Jewish, 50% Catholic. I have all of the guilt. I never lie, because out of the fear that was instilled in me. And so to not have an adult believe me was just so disorienting. She had to call my mom to be like, is this true? And my mom's like, it absolutely is true. And so it's been really interesting to move through life kind of in between a group of adults and a group of children, both of which I'm connected to through my family. The big thing that happened for me in childhood was that at 8 years old, my mom, Diane O'Malley, was diagnosed with colon cancer. And this was back in 1990, when we were not doing colonoscopies or screenings or anything like that. And it was really, at least to my understanding, experiences that my mom went through that really helped to and the research they did that really helps to inform, or at least I like to think helps to inform, all of the great preventative efforts we have around colon cancer right now. But she fought hard for 4 years, and eventually the cancer just took over. And so at 12 years old, I lost my mom to colon cancer. And it's something that, when I think about grief, because we all go through it, whether it's simple grief, complicated grief, grief is the price that we pay for loving someone with our whole hearts. And so when those thoughts and feelings come up around her 31 years later, I can't even believe that I'm saying that. It really informs and reminds me what an amazing person that she was, choosing to leave a marriage in the 1960s with 3 kids, working 3 jobs, because she knew it was the better outcome for her and the better way to live, instead of staying in that marriage. But I'm wondering if I can share a quick story about her that I think really informs also what I do for a living now, which is, back in this would have been 1991, 1992. We had just finished up dinner. I hopped on the phone with my very best friend. Her name was Jenny Moy. We're 10 years old, chatting on the phone, corded phone attached to the wall. Entire family can hear everything that you're saying. There's no privacy. And we're on the phone for about an hour. And then I hung up the phone, and my mom was sitting at the kitchen table reading Better Homes and Gardens, drinking a Crystal Pepsi, because it was all the rage at the time. And without missing a beat, looking up from her magazine, she says, "You are grounded for 2 weeks." I know, I see your face. That was my face too. I'm like, Mom, what are you talking about? And I'm going through the conversation in my head. Did I swear? Was I mean? Did I lie? What did I do on the phone that with my best friend that's garnering this punishment or this consequence? I'm like, Mom, I don't understand. Why am I grounded for 2 weeks? And she goes, you were on the phone with your supposed best friend for an hour, and all you did was talk about yourself, your day at school, your piano lessons, your swim practice, your dance class. And you not only didn't even pause to let Jenny share anything about herself, but you didn't ask her a single question. And that's not how we treat people in this home. So you're grounded for 2 weeks. And that was the first time at 10 years old I had ever been grounded, ever. And it was just, I was beside myself that I had let down my mom, that I might have caused harm to my friend, that I was grounded and receiving a punishment because being a good kid was really
Yeah.
important to me. And it's so interesting now in the work that I do, Andrew. I listen for a living. And so to think that that moment and her presence, even though she hasn't been a part of my life for 31 years, persists through the work that I do every day with clients and students. And obviously, right now, I am doing the bulk of the talking because I am a guest on your podcast and I understand the irony. But yeah, I think that was one of the most formative moments for me. And she passed away about a year and a half later while we were down. We had just moved down to St. Louis. And then it was just me and my dad living in a community where we didn't have any family, hadn't put down any roots yet. And it taught me a whole lot about the power of building connection through curiosity and letting others take the lead. And so I'm going to pause there because I've been talking for a minute. Anything I can expand on? And is that what you were looking for?
No, it's great because it gives us the context of what then led to. So obviously you've got the two strong faiths in your life, obviously the influence of your mum. I guess before we go into your 20s and how all of that experience informed then that early self-leadership style that we can talk about, just talk to us of those sort of key teenage years, obviously with your father, and what was the impact then in terms of that relationship between the two of you that then led on to your sort of later teen years and 20s?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because this was the 90s, right? And so we weren't having the conversations about the the fairness of how gender roles impact what happens in a house, right? And so one of the things that dad did was continue just being dad. And I work, I make the money, I provide food, clothing, and shelter, and Katie's going to figure out the rest. And so what it really instilled in me is a very a very deep sense of the need to be independent and working on in therapy my hyper independence as a result of that. But I think it also instilled this really strong work ethic because I just had to figure everything out on my own. Dad was working 8, 10, 12 hours out of the day. No one was there to ride me about doing homework, practicing the cello, figuring out how I was going to get from activity to activity. And while I don't blame him or hold resentment against him because this is just he continued to fulfill the role that he had always played, I did end up stepping in to do more of those motherly or wife type roles in that more traditional partnership, not in a weird or creepy way, just as soon as I got a car, I was the one doing the grocery shopping and the dry cleaning runs and all of that good stuff. And it really, for me, I think is a reason I've been so successful as an entrepreneur and small business owner, because you have to wear a lot of hats and do all the things and just suck it up and get it done. And that's very much what my experience was day to day after my mom passed away. But I was never wanting for anything.
No, I appreciate that. Now, that's really interesting you share that. And obviously, there are other people listening to this who can relate to this story. And there are so many people out there who go on to be successful leaders where they've obviously suffered a loss of a loved one at a younger age, a younger age as you did. And it really does stay with you in terms of that. And, for me, I want to come back to this. It might not be relevant now, but there's this thing about the independence and also being entrepreneurial and a founder. And sometimes I'm guilty of this and I'm getting better at it through my therapy as well. But, for me, it's about knowing when to ask for help and that pride and that habit we've built up where we've just worked it out on our own. And so surely we can work this one on our own. So remind me, we definitely want to come back to that whenever it's relevant.
Asking for help,
the journey.
Yes. That is also on my therapy to-do list.
Absolutely. Well, let's see how that manifests. So let's talk about you and your 20s then. So we obviously have different influences around, again, depending on the environments we go into. So just talk to us about that decade in your 20s and what happened to you until that point was informing the way you showed up in those environments as a leader.
Yeah. It's so my 20s was really where I started to discover leadership development, leadership education as a field of work and a field of study. So I went to college at Miami University in Ohio. For those of you who are confused that there is a Miami in Ohio, the university was built along the Miami River on lands that had belonged to the Miami Indian tribe, right? So we always say we were a university before Florida was a state. And so I went to college and studied political science because in those values of courage, learning, and justice, I thought this is the way I'm going to make a difference in the world. This is how my driver of altruism and really wanting to help others, this is how I'm going to be able to have the biggest impact. And so studied political science, but I always say I majored in politics and I minored in student activities. So I was a member of our campus activities council that planned homecoming and family weekend and all of those great events that are often associated with an American collegiate experience. And I was also a member of Alpha Delta Pi sorority, which was the first secret society founded for women. And our founder back in 1851 was like, well, if the guys can have their own secret society, we should be able to have our own. So that's one of the reasons that I joined that particular sorority, because it had such this feminist bend to it and this pride of we are women, hear us roar. So our not mascot, but was a lion as well.
Yeah.
And so being part of a liberal arts education focused in on politics and having these two sets of extracurricular experiences to be able to take those learnings into, this is where I really started to understand leadership and step into more formal leadership roles. Now, at this time, I didn't have the understanding that anyone can lead from anywhere, title, no title. You are an executive assistant, you are a CEO, everyone can step forward and lead at any point. And so was really focused in on being the president of the Panhellenic Association, which was the president of all of the sororities on campus, just really driving home, again, that value of altruism. How are we using our power as a community to help the community that we have established this campus in, right? And so it was more about giving time than giving money, which money plays a big role in my story. And I don't know, Andrew, if this is something that you've experienced, clients of yours have experienced, but really almost looking at money as something that was evil or corrupt. And gosh, why do I need this? But now as a career coach and helping people figure out what they want to do with their lives, we work so we can participate in this capitalist society that we live in, right? To the extent that what we earn allows us to have that power to be able to participate in the ways that we want to. And it was really hard for me to make that connection. And so I'm like, I am going to sacrifice. I've never wanted for anything. I've had all of this privilege growing up, not thinking about the trauma of losing my mom as something that was really impactful or wanting people to think I was using that as a crutch. And so after I graduated from college, which was in the year 2004, had the opportunity to work on John Kerry's campaign for president.
Wow.
And as a political science major, I'm like, I've done it. I did all of the things. I performed well in high school, performed well in college. I got my dream job, which was working on a campaign. I'm set. I figured it all out. I think you know partially where this story goes, which is I didn't have it all figured out because after the campaign, which I'll always tell folks, that was the hardest I ever worked until I became a small business owner almost 20 years later. There was no paycheck, there was no health insurance, there was no job prospects because the candidate didn't win. And so it was at that point I realized I'm like, this is not sustainable for me. Even though I thought this is what I wanted to do, I pivoted into the nonprofit sector. And my gosh, spent the next 8 years working in New York City and Chicago in fundraising and development. So working with the teams to raise money for one organization called the Innocence Project, where our work was our work existed to exonerate folks who had been wrongfully convicted using DNA evidence that wasn't available for testing at the time of their conviction. And so these were people who went to prison as innocent men and women who were spending 20, 30, 40 years behind bars for a crime they didn't commit. It was incredible work, in a lot of ways very satisfying, but living in New York City on any salary is hard, much less a nonprofit salary. And so after about 3 years out there, I moved back to Chicago, continued the nonprofit work in that same vertical of fundraising and development for the AIDS Foundation of Chicago, but still had that similar feeling of dissatisfaction, disengagement, instability. And I really just chalked it up to compensation, right? Like I am dissatisfied because I'm not earning enough money. And I know to some extent that was true, but it was also a mismatch of skill and a mismatch of what was really driving me. And so instead of visiting with a career coach or a career counselor, I saw a lot of my friends having success in commercial real estate and decided, well, I can do that, and transitioned from the nonprofit sector into commercial real estate. And had I met with a helping professional, they would have said, Katie, there's a values discrepancy here that you might want to investigate. And Andrew, on the very first day, I knew I had made the wrong choice and I was in the wrong environment. And I want to be really clear that an environment that was toxic for me doesn't make the environment toxic on the whole, right? And so, but it really was, because the values were so misaligned. I was not showing up feeling competent in the work that I was doing every day, nor did I feel a sense of belonging or community. And those are the two things most people are looking for when they go to work. It's not tons of bells and whistles and perks, but do I feel competent to do my work? Am I set up for success? And do I feel a sense of community and like I belong here? And so very much raised, you grit it and you don't quit it. And you also do not quit a job unless you have another job, which is not my perspective anymore. So I ended up sticking it out for almost 4 years. And at year 3, it had gotten to the point that the 9 to 5 had taken such a toll on my mental health that I needed to take a medical leave of absence from work. Now, this was 2012. We were hardly talking about mental health at all. And if we were talking about it in a really stigmatized way. But we definitely weren't talking about mental health in the workplace and an employer's responsibility to take care of their employees. And so when I took that medical leave, the human resources team was like, but you're fine, like you're physically here. And Andrew, I told them, I'm like, I wake up crying every day. I go to bed crying every night. When I am not here, I'm curled up on a ball in my bed or on the couch. This is not normal, and I can't continue to live this way. And so during the 3 months that I was on leave, I went to inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment, did the healing work that I needed to do, and realized during that time that my identity and self-image was so misaligned with how I was spending 8, 10, 12 hours out of the day. But more importantly, that I wasn't the only one, right? So being in mental health treatment programs in groups was so illuminating to be able to see, my gosh, I'm not the only person struggling with this. And coming out of that experience, what I really wanted to do was help other people facing the same challenge in an ethical and responsible way. And so applied to graduate school at 30, worked full time, got that degree in the evenings and on the weekends. But what was so interesting is that as I was going through the program, it became pretty apparent to me pretty quickly. Insurance companies are not keen to cover conversations about work because work is not a mental health diagnosis, even though work leads to burnout, and the symptoms of burnout are identical to those of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress. So I finished the master's degree in counseling, but instead of getting licensed as a therapist, I got certified as a coach. And that takes me to the end of my / bleeding into my early 30s. So I will pause there.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a really great explanation. And I'm sure, again, what I'm loving about this podcast is there's going to be so many people out there where this story is resonating. So I have one question for you now, which either you can answer in relation to the period you've just talked about, or it bleeding into your 30s. So the question is, bear in mind what you told me so far, and I'm getting a good picture about, what's been going on for you, is the background that you had made you fiercely independent. You had to be. So you learned how to be resourceful. Lay on top of that, what was already present, the sense of your servant leadership, you were in service of others. And then I'm starting to think about the oxygen mask, about us putting on that so we can be in service of others because we are looking after ourselves. So even though it's all very easy with hindsight to say what we could have done, what advice would you give to people out there who maybe are feeling as though they're moving into a period where they are worried about themselves and maybe they don't find it easy to ask for help and are fiercely independent? What advice would you give to those people?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is that as humans, we are social creatures. We evolved to be social creatures. None of us are meant to do this alone. We are here to connect with other people, to see and hear other people. And when we ask for help, we're actually doing a service to others because it allows them to actually step in and connect with us in a way that they otherwise might not be able to do. And so when we don't ask for help, we're actually reducing our ability to connect with other people. And we're not giving them the opportunity to shine and bring forth all of the strengths and skills and experiences and lived experiences they have to be able to support us. We don't go through life having all of these experiences to hold them for ourselves. We're meant to do it in community and with others. So that would be the first thing I would say, is shift that mindset. None of us could survive on our own, period. Full stop. Now, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. The other thing I would say is, even though mental health and seeking help for mental health has been significantly destigmatized as a result of the pandemic, there's still holdover, right? And people thinking they can white knuckle their way through. And what I would say is, why? Why put yourself through that? Let a professional help you. I take 20 milligrams of Lexapro every day to help me. It has not changed my personality or made me care any less. It's just gotten me to a place where my generalized anxiety disorder doesn't prevent me from taking the next best step. And if you're feeling stuck, that's all you need to do. Just take the next best step, not focus on the finish line.
Of that. Thank you. So that brings us to the last 12 or 13 years. I think I got that right, because I think you said 2012. So just talk us through what the journey has been like, again, from this learning about self around leadership. And I'm really interested in leadership because the stage of life that you were at then and to now, we start to lead not necessarily movements, but other things outside of us and our businesses and our communities. So just talk to us a bit about the last sort of 12 years.
Yeah. So after graduating with my master's degree in counseling, I was hired by the University of Texas at Austin to work in their Leadership and Ethics Institute. So working with undergraduate and graduate students in their career and leadership development, really focusing in on helping students understand themselves. So that component of self-awareness, interpersonal effectiveness, and all of the skills that come along with both of those things. I was also in graduate school, took a lot of electives around leadership and became a theory and framework nerd. And so always wanted to talk about those with students, but they were more interested in, how am I going to get a job when I graduate? How am I going to effectively lead my student organization, right? So coming full circle to those experiences I had in college. What was so interesting to me is, Andrew, when I graduated and moved into higher education, again, just like with politics, I'm like, I found my spot. This is it. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And it was another grueling experience for a lot of reasons. And I remember when I accepted the job at UT, I had people say to me, Katie, the culture is really different. I'm like, it's Austin. It's fine. It's America. It's fine. It was not fine, Andrew. There was a deep undercurrent of racism and sexism that flowed through that culture. It was also a highly traditional culture driven by how are we upholding the people, practices, policies, processes that came before us. Like I can't think of a stronger tradition than those at the University of Texas. And that's a problem for someone like me who's very much about wanting to challenge the status quo and challenge norms to make things better. And I wasn't able to articulate this for the 20 months that I was working there. But every time I shared a new idea or a new way of doing something or a way to better the student experience, it actually felt like a slap in the face to administration. And so, again, what was toxic for me isn't toxic for everyone, but it was not a good match. And I'm like, holy cow, all right, let's try this again. After 20 months there, was hired at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, where I spent 5 years working with full-time MBA students in their career and leadership development. It was incredible to be surrounded by such brilliant faculty members, team members, exceptional students, and that the piece around my altruism, being a driver, I'm like, I know I'm making a difference here, but not everyone gets to access such exceptional educational experiences, much less all the bells and whistles that come along with those. I want to start my own thing. And so didn't do any market research, just I'm like, I have a skill and a service to offer, got myself an LLC, built a website on Wix and said, if I build this, will anybody come? I dropped, I don't know, $372 into both of those two things. I'm like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. No big financial risk here. And wouldn't you know, if you offer a quality service and help folks to get where they want to go by doing what you say you're going to do, not only will they come back, but they're going to refer you to other folks. And so the business started in 2018. From 2018 to 2020, I had some nice steady growth, right? And then the Great Resignation hit, what I am now referring to as the great talent grab, but that can be another conversation we have down the road. And the business just took off, and it got to the point where I was working 9 to 5 at the university and then seeing private clients 5 to 9 in the evenings and on the weekends. And during the height of the pandemic, I was like, well, it's either help people and earn some money to keep building this business, or sit on the couch and drink wine and watch Netflix until I fall asleep. And in 2022, as things started to reopen and we started to come out of the pandemic, I realized I couldn't be preaching work-life balance to my clients and not practicing it myself. And so 2022 was the year I turned 40. And I said to myself, if I don't bet on myself now, when am I going to do it? And so January 2022, I put in my resignation at the university, went all in on the business. And I said to myself, I have a year's worth of runway here to pay my mortgage, my health insurance. And worst case scenario, I go back to working for someone else in 2023. But wouldn't you know, with the resourcefulness that comes along with hyper independence or fierce independence, I love the way that you framed that. What you're able to do for a small business when you can dedicate 40 to 50 hours a week to it instead of just accepting clients that come your way. And so 2022, my gosh, that was 3 years ago now and a few months. And it has been the most professionally rewarding and financially satisfying 3 years of my career. And so I'll pause there because that takes us into my 40s.
No, exactly. Great. And I've got 2 more questions to ask you, and that'll take us to the end of the show today. But they are, I think, very relevant, both in terms of our audience and also to understand where it is you might be in the future. So bear in mind what you've done. And by the way, because I did it as well, and people listening to this may be thinking about doing it, a really courageous step to actually let go of the comfort in that sense and really live the life you want to live with the risk that's associated with that, even though you had a runway. What advice would you give to anybody out there that maybe is doing a similar thing? So either they're really yearning to do something on their own where they can really give service to what they're passionate about fully, wholly, and yet they may be feeling safe where they are right now. What is it that can encourage them to take that leap when it is right for them?
Yeah, I think the first piece is around having the self-awareness for what feels like a tolerable risk for you. And for me, I wasn't going to leave unless I had enough money in the bank account for a year's worth of expenses. That was my goal. And when I got there, I'm like, oh, that nicely coincides with the 40th year that I will be making this turn around the planet, right? So it wasn't when I turn 40, I will. It was when I have this safety net, I will take this step. But even before that, just the decision to start in 2018, you do not have to have an entire business plan and 5-year strategy in place and a whole marketing and sales pipeline ready to go. Just start. Start. And the first client that comes your way, treat them like gold. The second client that comes your way, treat them like gold. You just take care of the clients you have. I still don't look for clients. I just take care of the ones that I have and more come my way. And so I would encourage folks, similar to my response on struggling to ask for help with mental health, it is just keep taking the next best step. And your clients are going to tell you what they need. You'll build it for that client, and then you're going to have a product to share with the next. So you got to trust yourself that you have the skills to deliver, and the other pieces are going to fall into place. And you're not going to build a McKinsey or a Bain or a McDonald's or an Amazon overnight. But if we think about what is success, right? What is it for you? And for me, it's knowing every person I help, their lives have been changed, and hopefully they can change the lives of the workplaces they go into in the future.
Thank you. So the final question for you, Katie, I've really enjoyed having you on the show. And it goes back to, I guess, the fondness and that unconditional love that you still have for your mum all these years on. And so because of what she had left in terms of her legacy, how it's really stayed with you, what about yourself? What legacy do you want to leave when you've left this mortal coil?
Yeah. Gosh, I want to leave a legacy of courage and generosity. That when people think of me, they think of someone who is always willing to give their time, whether or not they were getting paid for it, to really be of support and service to another human or group of humans. And as someone who was courageous enough to do the hard thing, say the hard thing, take the difficult stance, be willing to wear tennis shoes on a stage, giving a keynote because I have 27 pieces of titanium in my right foot, and to say, this is who I am, take it or leave it. And I think it's Brene Brown who says that's one of the most courageous things that we can do is tell our story and show up as who we actually are every day. And if I can be remembered for my courage and generosity, that would be the best legacy that I could.
For those of people that are listening to this and watching this now and they want to maybe reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that, Katie?
So I always say, send me an email. You will get me, not an EA or a virtual assistant. So you can shoot me a note, katie@encouragecoaching.org, website of the same name, www.encouragecoaching.org, or connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram @EncourageCoachChicago.
Katie, I'm so pleased that we connected on LinkedIn in the first place. I've really enjoyed hearing your story. Thanks for the honesty. Obviously, lots of emotional stories there as well. And I really appreciate you sharing those. And also it proves, doesn't matter what age you are, for you it was 40 when you started to live, the life that you want to live on your terms, being in service and not necessarily having to look for clients. It comes to you by doing the right things in the right moment for your current clients. For me, it was 47. But for those people listening out there, I think there's some real encouragement. It doesn't matter how old you are now, there's that opportunity and possibility to live the life that you want to live rather than the lives that other people want you to live. So I really appreciate you being on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader. You can access all previous episodes of the show at confessionsofaSuccessfulLeader.com. If you are interested in finding out more about conscious leadership and self-coaching, just type in Andrew Tallents into LinkedIn or your favorite browser, and you'll find my contact details and all the content that you need. Until next time, don't forget to stay present, curious, and above all, conscious.